All right, the SCC has come to a conclusion, and we have a new SCC champ. It's going to surprise probably no one, but we have been talking about the SCC for a long time, and it's just one of those events that I'm always excited about. Regardless, a ton of these online events don't really interest me all that much, but the SCC is always there to hold my heart. And doing the stats for the SCC, both men's and the women's division, the open division is Smarter Chess. Matt Jensen joining us today. How's it going, Matt?
Good, thanks. It's been a good day, Jesse. How have you been?
I have been good. Did you see Anish Giri mention you in a tweet?
No, I did not. What did he say?
Oh, I sent it to you. It was they were showing the stats for the I think it was Hikaru versus Hans, like the odds of winning or something. And Anish just said something like, "Does Smarter Chess still think like Hans cheated in those 100 games, or does he think he's clean now?" He's just like basically asking whether you took the 100 games of him performing well into the odds, or if you scraped it out because of the cheating allegations. Uh,
Oh,
Fun stuff. Always good when Anish Giri is tweeting at you. I have some Anish Giri content to go over later in the episode.
did,
Uh, Sorry, go ahead.
did you respond to that tweet?
No, I didn't. I didn't see it until today, and it was a few days back.
Okay, that's cool.
I should have. I sent it to you on WhatsApp though. If you go back, you can probably find it.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
No,
That's
that's all
awesome.
right. I see Dennis in the chat. Hi, Dennis. Okay, so let's go over the SEC. What all happened in Paris? So we were down to four players. You probably know the story. Magnus Carlsen versus da 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 da. Who else? Hans Moke Niemann. A dream matchup. Chess fans rejoicing all over the world. And then in the other side of the bracket, Hikaru Nakamura versus Alireza Firouzja. So I was so excited to watch Magnus versus Hans, and we kind of had an off day where I could actually watch a little bit of the match, which is nice. And Magnus got off to a pretty good start and basically didn't look back. So everyone was wondering just how good Hans is going to be. Nobody really knew how good he was. So I think you mentioned last episode, Ben Feingold said, like, we know he got better, but we're not exactly sure how good he really is.
Right.
Well, we found out. So Magnus played Hans in the first match of the day. And how did that one go?
It was the final score was 17 and a half for Magnus, 12 and a half for Hans. But if you watch the match, it was never that close.
Yep.
It was actually a 10-point lead for Magnus at one point, and you could just tell Magnus was disinterested for the whole bullet section and probably most of the 3+1 section, the middle section of the three.
Yep.
And at the end, there was controversy, of course.
Yep.
Hans had a complaint that a piece was jumping or his mouse was lagging or something. And he complained about this 2 games in a row. The first game, Magnus was actually winning the game. He was in a
Hmm.
position that he probably converts that 90% of the time. And the arbiter just trying to smooth things over. And I think she did a good job with Hans, but she said, let's restart this game. And I think this is the reason why they restarted the game, Jesse. Because of the chess.com tech that they have in place,
Hmm.
it would have been such a pain for them to try to figure out how to set those clocks to the exact times with the exact start position. There's no easy way to just
Yeah.
jump into that same scenario, but that would have been the fairest thing to do. Like, if anything, somehow just give him like a take back and say, let's play it from here if they are able to confirm it on video. Now, I
Yep.
don't even know if they confirmed his claims on video. I
Hmm.
feel they were just thinking, Magnus, let this one slide. You know, you won the match. We just want to get Hans to finish it out.
And was he also complaining earlier on in the match too? Like I'm pretty sure on his first win, he was complaining about something and they had to like pause the match for a little bit and like confirm with Judith Polgar, and basically they just threw everything out and kept playing like normal. Do you remember that, or is that in the consolation maybe?
No, I think that was in the same match. There was something that they checked and they just said like, nope, it was fine, and then they
Yeah.
kept playing.
So, so Hans is complaining about nothing, it seems, or I don't know, maybe he had a valid complaint, but they didn't exactly share what he was complaining about. And then the exact same thing happened after that game too, as he complained about something, and they just restarted the game. And Bangus kind of didn't care. he he took the Naka approach and just didn't care because he was up by so much. And I think Magnus was a little relieved to just show his class and not have to like really work to like grind out a bullet win or something like that against Hans and really controlled the whole thing. So Magnus moved on to the finals. Hans moved on to the consolation bracket. And then we had Hikaru Nakamura versus Ali Reza Faruja. And if you listen to the chess goals recommendation for who to bet on, you lost a lot of money. We are
Ooh,
sorry. Ali Reza Faruja looked unstoppable, honestly, after his performance against Hikaru, where he ended up winning 16-11. It almost seemed like he had a chance against Magnus, like he was going to really do it. So he started off. Let's see, one, two. I'm trying to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 to 2.5. So really strong start for him in the 5+1, and he just didn't slow down. Naka seemed to be like a good sport at the end of it and said that Ali Reza played extremely well in time pressure, and basically Naka couldn't keep up. So you wonder if this is a turning of the tide or a handing over of the keys to the next generation in speed chess. So far, this is what the fifth speed chess, sixth speed chess, and it's only ever been Carlsen and Nakamura winning it.
yeah. Let me give a little background on how I set this prediction, though.
Okay.
Hikaru has the insane record going into this game of, I think it was 33-3 or something like that.
Yeah.
And what I do to create these predictions is I create ratings for the three segments. And those ratings I will slightly tweak going into each season if there's some particular circumstances like an improving junior, or maybe they increase their classical or increase their blitz rating on chess.com, something like that by
Yeah.
a big margin. But going into it, Hikaru was a clear number 2 in the power rankings. Ali Reza, I want to say, was like sixth. Now, if you look at the matches leading into the game, where the match where they played each other, round one, Hikaru beats Jospim, who's a beast in blitz, 14-8, so 6 point win. Ali Reza beats Grischuk by 3 points. Now, in my opinion, Jospim is a tougher match than Grischuk. Grischuk used to be pretty good in this format, but a lot of people have passed him up. He's not the blitz beast that Jospim is. Round two, Hikaru beats Jan Nepomniachtchi by 5 points. Jan is very good in this format.
Yep.
Ali Reza beats Fabiano by 6. So that's pretty good, but Fabiano traditionally struggles a lot in the SCC. He's not a bullet player for sure, and only recently has he improved his blitz. So like you look at these games leading into this match, I thought Hikaru played better in the bracket so far, and he had the better track record going into this year. So then we saw the betting line, which obviously knew something that I didn't know because they said 1.5 point favorite for Hikaru. The only thing I could figure out was they're just saying, well, based on other events for Ali Reza, we think he's doing well. But what do you think of that? Like seeing all these stats going into this game, what do you think the prediction should have been prior to the match?
No, it seems so fluky that Ali Reza pulled ahead and just like won by 5. Like that seems crazy. I still
Yeah,
think Nakamura on paper, I still think Naka's probably like a 5 or 6 point favorite in this format. Like they're playing 27 to 30 games. Like I still think
yeah,
Naka wins the vast majority of the time if they could play it over 10 times, which I would watch, by the way.
I agree with you. And there was an interesting quote from Naka after. He said against a lot of other players, he's fine having a tie going into the bullet
Oh
because
yeah.
he knows he can pull away in the bullet. But against Ali Reza, and that's one of the exceptions, probably only Ali Reza and Magnus can actually play punch for punch with Hikaru, so he can't just, rely on bullet only.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And oh yeah, we're
There's
we're gonna talk about Ali Reza's post-match interview. He kept calling Hikaru old and saying, "Yeah, it's impressive that he plays so well for a senior, for like a senior citizen who's like getting his AARP cards in the mail." I wasn't sure if he was trolling or joking or kind of like making a serious point. What do you think from that?
I think he was 80% joking, but maybe 20% truth, where he's like,
Yeah.
you are getting older because
Hmm.
I mean, Hikaru's 36.
Yep.
And for most, the average player, 36 is not old, but at the very top, their peak is around 28. And I think for faster time controls, the peak is even younger than age 28.
Yeah, Naka is as old as a podcast, episode number 36. It is
Oh, nice.
crazy. It is crazy his longevity though. Both Magnus and Naka, like every single year they're making the finals. That's like 6 or 7 years in a row now. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe this could be a turning of the generation. So Faruja's coming up. Maybe in the next couple years we'll see Gakesh. We'll see guys like Pragnananda making runs in the or in the SEC, or even Hans again. Or maybe Fruja is just in top form right now. He just had an excellent event at Sinkfield, and he's coming off that into the SEC. So maybe he's just really playing in his prime form right now. He's going to roll that into I don't know like a 2790 run or something like that in OTB. We'll see. We'll kind of see how this plays out over the next couple years. But I think that just deepens the storyline for next year when they get to meet again at some point.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think you're right. There's a generational shift that's happening right before our eyes. Even if you look at the classical leaderboard,
Yeah.
we have Magnus, Naka, and Fabi. One, two, three. But then after that, 4 through 9, all of those players are under age 25. And if you go 4 through 8, they're all 21 and younger. So
Wow,
I
that's
think we're
crazy.
hitting this point now where it's like, yeah, we got 3 30 year olds still hanging in there. But after that, we have teenagers and people in their young 20s.
Yeah, you just wonder how long it's going to be till Magnus gets dethroned. But he has been world number one. It's been like 10 years, right? It's been a long time.
Yeah, at least 10. I think he probably 2011 or something he got it.
Yeah, so like 13 years. All right, so
Hmm.
let's go to the consolation. So Naka and Hans both lost, and so they're playing in the consolation for third place. And this one was not close at all. So Naka really ran away with it, and you kind of expected to see it. But Hans basically got steamrolled. He got crushed, and he really showed that he is just in a different class in speed chess than everyone else at the field. So the final score of that one was 21-9, and that's even being generous for how close the match was. Like Hans was never really in it the whole time. Did he complain about anything in that match, or did he just kind of play it straight?
I don't remember him complaining about anything, but I do find it interesting that Hans had such a good run, beating MVL, beating Wesley So. And then, I mean, I think of that Magnus match as essentially like a 10-point win for Magnus because it was so dominant early on.
Yeah,
So essentially, he lost both matches in person by double digits.
yeah. Yeah, not a good showing for him. He was obviously not happy with it. He said on Twitter, like, no excuses for my performance. I just wanted to play against the best players in the world. I'll come back stronger. We will see. We will see if that happens. And then in the final match, Magnus Carlsen versus Prime Ali Reza Faruja. I like this matchup because this is exactly who Carlsen was calling out like last tournament cycle, I guess 2 ago now, when he was everyone thought he was going to defend his title once more. He said, "Yeah, maybe I'll play if Faruja wins to kind of like beat the next generation." Well, Faruja did not win, and Magnus stepped down, vacated the belt, as they say. And so now Magnus and Ali Reza played for the SCC championship. And this was a very close match, wasn't it?
Yeah, 23.5 to 7.5. I mean,
Absolute domination.
Magnus just showed why he is Magnus, why he's the GOAT, strongest player of all time. He showed up big time in these finals. It was fun to watch.
23.5 to 7.5. Absolute slacking. The biggest deficit or like margin in basically the whole tournament for anyone that Magnus played all tournament. So absolutely destroyed and showed that he is the speed chess goat. I believe Magnus only has one loss in this format, and that was last year to Hikaru. Other than that, he's won every single match.
He did lose one to MVL.
Oh yeah, you're
It
right.
was
He
like two
did.
years prior to that.
Yep, you're right. You're right. Yeah, so that does it for the SCC. This was such a fun event. I think everyone knows Smarter Chess from the predictions on the SCC, so that's like how people know Matt. I
Yep.
recognized your name from the SCC way back in the day. So the SCC is always a good tournament, and they had a pretty well run event for the most part. You never know how it's going to go like live in front of real people. But I like that they had the crowd bumps in there. The players couldn't hear that, obviously. The commentary seemed really good. The venue and just like it was visually appealing. Like the video is very high quality. I mean, they had good backdrops and everything. So a very well run event. And they got to do it in Paris, where like the Olympics just came from Paris. Ali Reza's hometown, Paris, or I guess France. But yeah, a great event. I give this an A plus, honestly.
Yeah, me too. I think this is, like you said, this is the online event of the year. And honestly, it's more exciting to watch than like the World Chess Championship, even. I love that World Chess Championship, but it's so slow. It's one game. This is a lot of excitement with all these matches.
Yep. And that is actually coming up in a couple of months. I think end of November is when they start, but it's like November 30th to December 25th or like Christmas or something. Like the whole tournament lasts a month and a half. Not quite that long. But we will get to that later. So we were talking about Matt missed the Naka Faruja in his predictions, but when you look at all the other scores, it almost seemed like that's a little fluky because Magnus beat Hans by 5, but Naka beat Hans by 11. So like
Yeah.
big gap there. Hans and or sorry, Naka and Magnus have always been pretty close. So they beat Hans by about the same margin, but Naka lost to Ferrugia by 5, and Magnus beat Ferrugia by 16. Like that's a huge deficit. Uh, how do you think you're gonna adjust your rankings for next time around based on the matches last weekend?
I think Magnus is clear tier one. I still think Hikaru is probably tier 2A and Faruja's 2B. I agree with you. I think that was just on that day, Faruja was the better player. But if you run that match back 10 times, Hikaru probably wins 6 or 7 of those. I still think Hikaru is the favorite, and Hikaru is going to give Magnus a better match than Faruja did, of course.
Yeah. So like we were talking earlier where Magnus and Naka were kind of on the same upper tier. I think it's now a tier of one with Magnus. He just
Yes.
seems like head and shoulders above everyone, and so he's in his own tier.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think there's a big group for tier. I guess this would be tier 3. So if we have Faruja, Hikaru 2A and 2B, Hikaru being 2A. Tier 3, I think, has a lot of players in it. I think Hans is leading that tier just based on this year's SCC, which is kind of crazy. We're
yep.
saying he's the fourth best player in this format. He did make it into the final four,
Hmm.
but it's like both Magnus and Hikaru said they thought that there were only 3 elite players in the final four. And I agree with that. I think there's a
Yeah.
big gap between those top three and Hans, who appears to be number 4.
Yeah, and I wonder if someone else like Jan would be up like how he would do against Hans. He lost to Naka by 5, and so I mean that's better than what Hans did. So I wonder if Jan would maybe be a bit ahead of Hans, or maybe even MVL. I know that Hans beat MVL, but that was a very close match, and it basically came down to the tiebreaker. So that could have really gone either way too. So I think yeah, Hans, Jan, MVL, right there in the same tier. Um, but everyone else, yeah, seems like they're just too weak, too slow.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay, so Hans gave an interview with Gotham. Did you listen to this?
I did listen to a lot of it. Yes.
Okay.
It was so
I
funny.
yeah, I listened to most of it, but not all of it. I think I like skipped out on the last 10 minutes or so. But Hans said that Kramnik is his life coach. Did you see that?
Yes. He loves Kramnik, it appears.
I am so confused by this. Why? Why? I mean, yes, I get it. He's a former world champion, but it's like all the bullies are hanging out together. Kramnik and Hans. It's so weird. Is Hans like trying to get ahead of the cheating accusations or what?
The impression I get is Hans is very anti-chess.com.
Okay.
And he has this issue with people who are paid by chess.com, commentators for them, consultants for them, anyone essentially linked to chess.com he has issues with. Who is not linked to chess.com not many people.
Yeah,
Like they hire a lot of
basically
people to
everyone.
help.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who's anti-chess.com? Kramnik is by far leading that charge. So I think it's just natural that they paired up together with this huge common interest of bashing chess.com.
Yeah, so maybe that's, I guess, all it is. um okay, let's get into some more unhinged tweets. So Vladimir Kramnik says that Naka is only pretending to be one of the top blitz players of all time. Um, Interesting take. I don't think he's pretending at all. I think he is very clear number. I mean, tied with Fruja for number two. Uh, Pretending he is still absolutely top blitz player that he was, but isn't already because age starting to speak for itself. This is verbatim, by the
What?
way. And that is clear watching his games that aren't anymore same level as it used to be. Both players profited from yesterday's experience. That is a Kramnik tweet. Um, okay. Um, Someone tweeted, "Did he accidentally teach Hans 3+2 instead of 3+1?" Okay, good.
Huh, I like that.
uh, okay, here's another Kramnik. There's also something even more important than mastery of chess: mastery of your emotion. Learning it a key. Okay, sure. Whatever. Okay,
Y-
so uh,
y-
as soon as Han started complaining, Anish Giri on Twitter said something like, "I see those lessons with Kramnik are paying off."
That's pretty
Okay,
good.
I wanted to say one other. Okay, actually, they released the new Stockfish like the day of Hans and Magnus's match on that Friday, and Anish Giri says at Hans Moke just in time, just
I
in
saw
time.
that.
Legendary. And then there was one other one I wanted to point out. It was something about Kramnik tweeted about how Naka. I think it was this whole thing. It was like him pretending to be a blitz, expert, like pretending to be very good. He's lucky he got there because he's not that good. And Anish said something like, "Imagine watching the matches and thinking that Hikaru was the one player who's a little suspicious." And I thought that was a very interesting tale because if there's one person who's a little suspicious in that crew, it's Hans.
Yeah.
Uh, Hikaru has proved himself over and over and over. I don't even need to say it. I guess Kramnik needs to hear that Hikaru is not cheating, but some people, some people think he is. I guess, um, but there was clearly one person in the top four in the finals who was not supposed to be there, and that was Hans. He was just a class below the rest of them. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. He's 21 years old, and in 5 years from now, he may be the best player in the world. We will see.
You
Um,
know, as of now, we kind of have this assumption that OTB is a clean event, right?
yeah,
Let's look at the top blitz players for FIDE. Hikaru is number 3, only behind Magnus and Alireza. And
that's telling.
oftentimes he's 1 or 2, right? He's just happens to be 3, and there's a big gap between 3 and 4. Now, where is Hans on that list? He's 23rd. And I know he doesn't play a ton of blitz events, but if you look at those top 4, like you said, Ali Reza, Magnus, Hikaru, they're not suspicious at all. They're just as strong over the board.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Hans 23rd, like he's behind. Okay, get this. He's behind Wesley So, Fabi, Ding, MVL, Duda, Jan, Aragaisi, all these people who were in the SEC, and he gets past. So, okay, Kremnik, who's suspicious there? The top three rated Blitz players making the final four, or the number 23 guy making the top four? Like I'm not saying that Hans is dirty at all. I'm saying Kramnik should not be calling out Nakamura over Hans. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I don't think I have anything else to go over. Matt, do you have anything you want to go over before we call it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this was an awesome event, and I'm looking forward to the World Chess Championship coming up. Do you want to place bets on that or talk about who we think is going to win?
Yeah, let's do it. I think it's going to be good cash and it's not going to be all that close. I think is it best of 14? Is that the format? They change it so often.
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head. That sounds about right, though.
Let me see if I can find it.
And yeah, Ding hasn't been playing well, um, as we all know. So Gukesh has a great chance here. And if you look at the odds, Gukesh minus 200, Ding plus 145.
Yep, I think that's about right. So yeah, this is a best of 14. They go to tie breaks if required. And we were talking about this about how India would basically have to do everything to get the tournament there, and they failed. It is going to be in Singapore, so maybe we're going to have to hit up our friend Advice Cabinet, who lives in Singapore, and get him to report live on the scene for us and give us the details. So Gakesh D, he won the candidates a few months back, and he advances to face Ding Liren in the World Chess Championship. That is going to start on November 25th and go to December 13th. So after Thanksgiving and into kind of the Christmas break time. Um, okay, place your bet. Negative 200 on Gakesh plus 145. I know that Gakesh is like a 2-to-1 favorite, but with those odds, who would you take?
I'd still pick Gukesh.
I think I might pick Ding, honestly. Plus 145, those are decent odds, and Ding has been a top player for a long time. Ding went 100 games in a row without losing. And if you can do that, that's tough to beat. Tough to beat in a World Chess Championship.
So he was a top player for a long time, but what would you say he's been for a long time recently?
Yeah, he's been like a 2600 player, honestly, the last couple years. He's been like 2650, 2700. So yeah, that's a good point. Ding is now ranked. Sorry, I'm looking at Blitz. Ding is ranked
15th.
15th, 3 points ahead of one Hans Niemann. And Gakesh is ranked 7th, 2764. But I think his strength is actually probably a little higher than that.
I agree.
Um,
And if you look at Ding's age, he's almost 40. So you got to factor that in.
he's 31.
Yeah.
That's almost 40. 30. He's not an old grandpa like Hikaru at 36 or anything
Yeah.
like that. He's not like a podcast getting old at 36 years old.
I
Um,
saw like I think it was some comment on Reddit or something where they posted that exact quote where he was, Ali Reza said Hikaru's almost 40. And it was like all the 36-year-olds complaining about this quote saying,
yeah.
I'm not almost 40.
That's true. Okay, so we have something to look forward to in November. That is the 9-year-old D Gakesh versus the 47-year-old Ding Liren. It is youth
Right.
versus wisdom. No, we're just kidding. All right, we will probably be talking more about that in the next few podcasts for sure. And man, it is September. We are almost done with the whole year of podcasting. Isn't that crazy? We set out to do 10. We said we're for sure doing 10, and we had so much fun. We're like, well, we got to keep doing it. We have not missed a week since we started in January. I think we're for sure going to make the whole year, and I don't think we're slowing down. What do you think?
Got to keep moving. Can't stop now.
I think it's negative 1800 that we make it through the year.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Cool. Are you coming over on Saturday to watch UFC?
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Book it. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next week.